Welcome to another episode of the Dr. J. Bridge Show. My name is Jim Sternberg. I'm the host, and this is my co-host, Vicki. So, Vicki, who's our guest today?
We have a very famous bridge teacher today.
Really? Who's that?
You.
I have to do the show myself? Okay, well then we better get started. Okay, let's continue our discussion from last month on preempting. Now that you've decided to preempt, the question is how high. The old rules of 2 and 3 have long been discarded by winning players as being far too low, far too conservative. In his book on deception and harassment in Bridge, as far back as 1960, Fred Karpin wrote, "One cannot remain a stereotyped book player. Deception and harassment, if properly applied, will introduce color and zest into the game, which would be a dull game if you proceeded along strict mathematical lines and so-called rules." Remember, it's easy on paper to see what we might do after a preempt, to second guess and say, oh, I would have done this or I would have done that. But let me tell you, at the table it's not so easy. I'm sure you've all been there. I know I have. Kit Woolsey wrote in his book that in keeping with Newton's law of gravity, the accuracy of the opponent's bidding varies inversely with the level of the opponent's preempt. So when in doubt of how high to preempt, I usually just go for one more rather than one less. While we should all bid as high as we dare, we do not want to hear the dreaded auction where we end up playing in our preempt, doubled or not. That's rarely good. You have to give the opponents room to bid. The higher you bid, the more likely it will end the auction. A weak 2 bid rarely ends the auction, and a 4 spade bid usually does. Remember, the rank of the suits is important. Hearts and spades are different. Over 4 hearts, they can bid, but usually not over 4 spades. Over 3 spades, they can bid. So holding the same hand, we have to bid more with hearts than with spades. You have to give them a little room to go wrong. However, preempting is a two-edged sword, and its indiscriminate use can catch the player in his own trap. If less skilled players try to adapt all the expert tactics, they will probably become less skilled trying to substitute deception for proper technique. Sometimes straightforward bidding is better than fancy. By studying the expert approach and applying some of these strategies, you might find you are enjoying the game more. So today I want to talk to you about the proper use of weak 2 bids. Let's take a look. Let's talk about the rules of weak 2 bids. So everybody plays weak 2 bids. Let's talk about the 4 most common so-called rules and see what they're all about. What I always hear is, number 1, you need 2 of the top 3 honors in your suit in order to open. Number 2, you can't have 4 of the other major. Number 3, you need 6 to 11 high card points. And number 4, you must have a 6-card suit. So what does everybody say about rules? Yes, rules were meant to be broken. But remember, in bridge, there are no rules. Rules are really only guidelines. Good players don't use rules, they use judgment. So let's go through these rules and see what they're really all about. So if you're waiting for 2 of the top 3 honors, you're going to have a long wait. Are you happy, for instance, when you have an opening hand, but before you can open the bidding, your right-hand opponent opens a weak 2 bid? Isn't that irritating? So let's see. Let's look at this first set of hands. Which hand would you rather have? The hand with Queen 10-9 in the suit, or with Ace Queen empty 6th of the suit? Of course, the hand A is just as fine as hand B because it has good spot cards. so-called the soldiers, which are just as important, if not more so, than the honor cards or the generals. When it comes to drawing trump, it's those spot cards that make the hand so good, rather than having ace, queen, empty six. So if you're waiting for two of the top three, why would you pass hand A? Because you're waiting for two of the top three honors. Isn't that silly? So a good guideline for suit quality is any hand that contains queen, 10, 9 or better, along with some outside values. And now, playing this way, you can open more often and you can irritate them instead of them irritating you. Now what about four of the other major? Again here, we have to use some common sense. Let's look at this next set of hands. Here we have King, Jack, 10, 6 of spades and 4 baby hearts, or King, Jack, 10, 6 of spades, 3 baby hearts. So how can you really pass hand A and only open hand B? Do you really have hearts in either hand? If your hand, however, looked like this, when you had really had hearts, like the King, Jack, 9, 8 of hearts, now you have hearts. Now you might have a heart game and you might be reluctant to open 2 spades. But when you have 4 baby hearts, as compared to 3 baby hearts, that's sort of silly. Now what about the number of high card points? Supposing you had a hand like this, ace, queen, 6 of spades, etc. With this terrible 11 high card points, do you want to open 1 spade? Or do you want to open 2 spades? Either is okay. But remember, there's no such thing as a hand that's too good for 2 spades, but not good enough for 1 spade. It's one or the other. If you pass, you're never going to catch up. And suppose your partner was a passed hand. Supposing you had a hand like this, which has 13 high card points. But do you think you might have missed a game? Why not make life more difficult for the opponents and open 2 spades? You haven't missed a game with this hand, and you know the person on your left is going to be bidding anyhow. So open 2 rather than 1. And finally, why do you have to have a 6-card suit? Let's look at this hand. Which hand would you rather have? Ace, queen, jack, 10, 9? Or the hand with ace, jack, empty 6th? Well, sure, everybody wants hand A, but right now you're passing hand A and opening hand B. Does that make any sense? The hand you want, you're passing, and the hand you don't want, you're opening. Here's another example. King, queen, jack, 10, 9 versus ace, empty 6th. The first hand you want, but you pass, and the second hand you don't want, but you open a weak 2-bid. So whenever you have a good 5-card suit, plus some good distribution and not quite an opening hand, you should consider opening a weak 2-bid. Why not make yourself a tougher opponent? Like Nick Bollettieri said, make things happen at the table, and you'll find that the opponents are more likely to do the wrong thing. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed our show today. How did I do today, Vicki?
Jim, you did all right, but who's lined up for next month?
Well, next month we have Marty and Bergen and Keith Hansen are going to be coming back on the show again in the future months, so be sure to tune in. You won't want to miss them.
See you next time.